Well, hi everyone. My name is Andrea Merida. I am the co-chair of the Green Party of Colorado. And tonight we're here to have a short discussion with someone who is seeking the nomination for the Colorado Green Party for U.S. Senate. And we're going to have a conversation with Arn Menconi today. He's going to tell us his vision for Colorado, why he's running, and some of the issues that we think that are important for a U.S. Senate candidate and someone who serves in the U.S. Senate that they should be dealing with. So I want to go ahead and kick it off over to Arn. He's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about why he's running. Go ahead, Arn.
Thanks, Andrea. And let me first ask if there's any feedback that you're getting. Is the sound okay on this?
Yeah, it's fine. I just need to mute my microphone. So go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, listen, I want to thank people for joining us in the Green Party and me as I get further and further into running for you as a U.S. Senate candidate for the state of Colorado. I've been working on this campaign for about a year, but let me tell you why I got into all of this. I served as an Eagle County Commissioner between 2001 and 2009 as a Democrat. I have a master's in business administration from the University of Denver. And for about 21 years, I ran a national charity for disadvantaged youth called SOS Outreach. I've lived in Colorado for about 25 years now. I'm originally from Chicago, and I've had the opportunity to live in other places. I got my education, undergrad in communication from DePaul University. I've always been involved in politics. I campaigned in high school for governor. In college, in political science and economics classes, I had the fortune to go with our political science department to the Soviet Union at that time and understand about our different cultures. In the 80s, I marched with Poland in Chicago for solidarity and a bunch of different issues. But when I started to wake up was when 9/11 happened. And we all remember that, of course. I was in New York at the time of that tragedy, and I came back to Colorado in just the first few months of my county commissioner position. I had never held office before that. I was asked to sign a resolution that would condemn the terrorist and give President Bush the authority to go after the terrorists and usurp the power and work of Congress and work with the national security advisors. I wouldn't sign that resolution, and there was a recall attempt against me. We've been at war for almost 15 years now. So if you're a high school student or you're a parent of a high school student, they've only known war in the United States. And it's been estimated that we've lost almost 8 million people through war, and we've spent well over $1.5 trillion. I campaigned as a Democrat for Barack Obama. I campaigned for my opponent, Michael Bennet. And I campaigned for a lot of other Democrats up and down the ticket. I thought they were going to fight for people and not for corporations. And what I've seen them do over almost 20 years of my political career is to tell us they're going to fight for us, and then as soon as they get elected, work for corporations and get money from corporations. What I call the global corporate mafia is what is running not only our country, but is running politics from the European Union and all over the place. So I've got to the point where I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, but more importantly, I'm running on a mission to save lives. We have to stop endless wars. We have to fight for global warming, and we have to fight to narrow the inequality gap. Those are three basic reasons why I want to run for U.S. Senate. Now, I chose to leave the Democratic Party because I knew the Democratic Party was only going to continue acting as though they're for the people and then really not work hard on issues. So let's look at U.S. Senator Bennet, who, by the way, I think he's a wonderful person. I've met him numerous times. I was in Washington with him not too long ago, talking to him about why can't we have an authorization for military force, and follow our Constitution. And he said, you know, Arn, I don't sit on any of those committees. Well, he's one of 100 senators, and we need our senators to support whoever is the next president or fight against whoever is the next president for the issues that face each and every one of the Americans. So Senator Bennett, in the last 6+ years that he's been a US Senator, has voted for the Keystone Pipeline, has voted for fast tracks, has basically said he's undecided on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but yet continues to signal that he's going to support those issues. He hasn't supported or fight for bringing Syrian refugees into this country. He hasn't stood up against the endless wars. And I have in my inbox every day, I get an email from Michael. And it reads like this: Arnold, here's what you need to know before tonight midnight FEC deadline. The Hill, Nation Journal, Political, and the Washington Post all have named Colorado one of the top 10 most competitive Senate races, and I'm the only sitting Democrat on each list. If we don't win here, there's no way we'll take back the Democratic Senate. And with control with control of the Supreme Court on the line, we can't leave anything behind. That's what he says in each and every one of his emails or statements. I need money from you, in which he's going to actually raise about 10 million to 15 million from corporations. And then there'll be another probably 10 million in outside money. And then he'll scare us about how it all has to be about the Supreme Court. And then he'll get into office and we won't see him. He won't be coming to our communities. He won't be learning about what the real issues are, if it's the high cost of healthcare or the growth of charter schools in our state, or how the oil and gas industry pretty much has the state under control and lockdown so that no Democratic elected official will fight against fracking and keep fossil fuels in the ground. And he'll go back to Washington and he'll continue raising money and playing it very safe. So that's why I jumped in. That's why I'm doing it as a Green Party candidate, because if you go to the Green Party website, you'll look through all the issues that they stand for. And I got to tell you, I am super stoked and impressed with what they stand for and help fight with the Green Party for the citizens of Colorado.
Great, thanks for that, Arn. You know, you said something in your remarks about the current sitting senator. You know, he's not on a committee, therefore he doesn't have input as to what decisions come out of a particular committee. What is really your vision for how the senator from Colorado should be responding? I mean, give me an example of what you think your day would be like.
First, I'll start out with, I've been to Washington for 15 years. I was just there last week, and I was protesting against Donald Trump, and I was also protesting against the pro-Israeli lobby for the apartheid in Israel. And what they do, these elected officials, is they spend about 5 hours a day raising money from corporations. I don't know if you know this, but there are 4 lobbyists to every congressperson and senator in Washington, D.C. So when I go through the door, or you, if you came, Andrea, and you wanted to talk to me about the issues, there's not going to be a revolving door after you of lobbyists. I want to talk to the people who live and work in Colorado, not the ones who are fighting for legislation to make more money for their corporations. The other thing I want to do, and this is a very important thing that we've lost touch with. When we live in a corporate global mafia, that means the senators are puppets for the real people who are running the show. I want to be able to use my post and my bully pulpit to talk about the issues that mainstream media are not talking about, to talk about the issues that are really affecting this country. So where I have specialty is in the military budget and also foreign policy. Now, I may not be fortunate enough to sit on either of the two committees that could represent that, or maybe a budget or appropriations committee, but I still can get a microphone. I could still tell people, and this is what I wish Barack Obama had done, instead of leaving the people that put him in office and starting to represent the corporations, he could have been telling people to come to Washington and protest and talk about the issues that they want. If it's $15 an hour minimum wage, if it's stopping endless war, if it's putting teeth in the Paris summit on climate change. We need people to get out into the streets, and a leader's job is to speak about the real issues, inform them, get them excited, and show them how easy it is so that their voices are heard.
Great. You know, you're using the term endless war. There are people who would say, well, we've got ISIS that we have to deal with. And, you know, of course, there was 9/11 that we experienced as a nation. What is your response to the attitude of the amount of money and the attention that we're spending with regard to dealing with terrorism? And really what you think about what we ought to do with some of this terrorism, where it's coming from, and the expenditures that we're making. Give us your take on that.
Okay. Well, it's probably going to be the most talked about issue once the dust settles and we have who the two main presidential candidates are. But let's realize this, and most of the people who are watching are really smart and understand this. Now, terrorism replaced the Red Scare that we had after the Cold War had settled, and we no longer had an enemy that was another superpower. Historians and scholars will show us that the United States then went into another type of military interventionism. We practiced in places like Panama over the Panama Canal, and then we started to go into the Middle East. So we've been in the Middle East for over 35 years. In the 80s, we were arming and giving money and training the Mujahideen in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union, and out of that grew Al-Qaeda. So we basically have created terrorism out of all of our conflict in the Middle East by doing regime changes. So we take out one leader, put in another leader, or we use sanctions. For example, most Americans don't know that Bill Clinton put in sanctions against Iraq that cost 150,000 lives of children. We need a different type of foreign policy, and what it's called is we need to work on a peace economy. If we have a peace economy where, let me give you some numbers here. The US budget is about $4 trillion. The discretionary budget that I would get to vote on is about 1.3 trillion. I hope I'm right with that number. About 54% of that budget is the defense budget. And some would say it adds really to about $1 trillion. So we have a military, industrial, congressional, security, media complex, and a Israeli neocon lobby that is running our Middle East policy, that is killing innocent people and creating more problems for us. I want to make it perfectly clear. ISIS is evil, and we have to work in order to fight ISIS. But I don't see what we're doing as a solution. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's becoming a greater and greater problem. Let me wrap up with one more point, and this is an issue I would really like to spend more time on. But we're not even following the Constitution of the United States, and we're in conflict. One of the most important jobs that you would want me to play is to protect the United States from any type of threat. But can we start with following the Constitution of the United States and not having what is a quasi-dictator in the president going to war using a 2001 authorization for military force? We have to start by actually debating whether or not our country should be at war. Is this an existential threat? Is this an imminent threat? And is terrorism, where there is essentially some version of Al-Qaeda cells and ISIS in hundreds of places around the world, is this something that we're willing to spend ourselves into bankruptcy and give up our personal freedoms and surveillances? I mean, does the average American even understand the conversation about a backdoor entry into your Apple iPhone? This is just a scare tactic in order to raise more money for essentially the military contractors and the military industrial complex. We need to start using diplomacy. We need to be taking ourselves out of the Middle East. We need to get ourselves off of fossil fuels and oil. We need to stop selling weapons to places like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, that is run by essentially either dictators or despots that are using those weapons in order to decimate other countries like Yemen and make more and more terrorists fight against the United States.
Well, some would say that these are really strong threats. How would you recalibrate the relationship that we have, for example, with Saudi Arabia? You mentioned Turkey as well. How would you recalibrate some of those relationships that we have in that region as a U.S. senator, and maybe funding? And you talked about just diplomacy. Give me an example of what your role would be as a U.S. senator, irrespective of whatever committees you would be put on. But what does that look like to you?
Well, I mean, the pretty big question, but I would love to have the opportunity to kind of keep it simple. First of all, I don't want to be the last senator of an empire called the United States of America that is in decline because the global corporate mafia is trying to spend us into oblivion. All right. I would not allow a president or the Senate to get away with arming basically people who are committing war crimes, including our own country, in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is committing war crimes, and we've sold them almost $200 billion worth of weapons. As a matter of fact, Barack Obama has sold almost $1 trillion worth of weapons in the last 7.5 years. I applaud President Obama for not meeting with President Erdogan this last week, because President Erdogan is working as a dictator and he's shutting down newspapers in his country. We did not need to put a military, an Air Force base in Turkey and get ourselves further into this problem. If Erdogan's son is going to be basically black marketing oil from ISIS or Syria into other parts of the country, I'm going to lean on oil companies that are allowing the laundering of money and allowing the sale of this type of oil out into other places. So that means we're going to have to triangulate our strategies in order to make the country safer for us.
Okay. So it sounds as if because of the fact that our military budget is at about 54% of all of our revenue, how would you change that? How would you redirect some of that funding? Give me an idea of what you think.
First, I'd say, has anyone really been able to do it? Have we really been able to see anyone from a Senator Church who tried to go after the CIA or any one of the elected officials? Quite honestly, the only person in the last year who's done a great job of talking about this was Rand Paul when he was running for president. And he was called an isolationist for doing this. But this goes back again to messaging. I've sat in so many Senate hearings and listened to them talk about the sort of threat and how we have to grow the military and how we have endless dollars to support endless wars. And this is the thing that I find unjust. Those dollars and especially I'll use an example in the 2014 budget, they were cutting increases of salary to our troops while they were growing, buying more hardware for our military. Why does the increases in the budget to the military budget always go to what looks like the defense industry and not to our troops, not to the men and women who are actually trying to protect us, and not to their healthcare needs that they need? Those are where some of the dollars need to stay and need to grow for the people who are actually helping the United States, who are citizens. And what, if you also notice, the people who actually get enlist in the military are people who it's just a disgrace of how our military has become an alternative instead of education and higher education in order to build our country. But people have to go into the military, possibly lose their limbs, lose their lives, or have post-traumatic shock syndrome in order and not be taken care of by our country. I mean, the big framework here is there's a lot of money that we could be taking out of the military budget that even the Pentagon has asked to be cut, like military bases, like certain hardware, and be reappropriate into things like single-payer healthcare, into better education or free colleges. So we have to be very careful about how the threat of terrorism or not being strong enough is used as a red herring to make it look like I'm not tough enough. Well, here's where I'll be tough. Our military is larger than the next 7 countries after us. Our military is 3 times larger than China's. Why are we spending all of our money on things that are not protecting us, not making us any safer, just making Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and other contractors super rich? Because every congressman practically has a military base in their district, and they don't want to lose the funding from these contractors or lose the fear that they might lose some jobs in their communities, when it's been proven through statistics that retraining the areas that have military bases in it will create more jobs and better income for those local communities. May have jumped around a little bit, but I think you got the main point. We're being lied to. We're being lied to for the past 4 decades, from the Vietnam War to today, on why our government continues to go to war. We continue to go to war because that's how empires always operate. They destroy places, and then they try to finance them through different type of things like the IMF or the World Bank, and continue making these countries dependent on us. It's not a prescription for success. And if you believe in being a world citizen, we've got to go out there and be leaders and not continually destroying countries.
Well, some would argue that the job of the U.S. Senator is to try to bring some, reinforcement for jobs and to help spur the local economy. And it sounds like you're opposed to simply using the military-industrial complex to achieve that end. So, in your role as a U.S. Senator, I mean, what would you do? You did make an allusion to a green economy. What are your ideas on what we could do to kind of spur some jobs here for Colorado? What are your thoughts?
Well, let's go back to the first part of that statement. Over 35 years since Ronald Reagan was elected, have we not seen a massive separation of the rich and poor? So if it's our tax codes, if it's the expenditure on the military, if it's giving Wall Street the ability to have insane profits, is any of this creating any kind of jobs, any kind of sustainability? I mean, Colorado is starting to sell its road systems to places, I believe it was Australia, to their retirement funds. We're now privatizing our infrastructure in the United States. This is capitalism gone crazy, all right? We need, not that capitalism is a bad thing, But in order to try to put jobs, if I'm going to have to pay some $20,000 worth of taxes this year to the federal government, and about 5,000 of it is going to go to the defense industry, and some of it is going, a lot of it's going to go to be paying off debt. Why can't we spend some of this money on clean energy? Why can't we spend it on better education? Why does Wall Street get 0% interest rates while our students are paying exorbitant interest rates? And why are they graduating with $85,000 in debt, and the only jobs that they could go out there and find are $35,000 jobs, $45,000 jobs? It's some new form of indentured servitude. So we've got to prime the pump by finding ways and investing in businesses. I mean, the one that I find to be quite insane is how this state and this governor, this Democratic governor, has basically made this state a pincushion for fracking. There's over 40,000 wells in the state of Colorado. It's the old days. They come in, they rape the land, and then they leave. And there's no retraining for any of those areas or any of those jobs to try to get the people back in. The only type of jobs that we have right now are service sector jobs that most people could go out and expect. So to reiterate my main point, the first thing I would start putting money into is higher education, better education, and training, so we have a smarter workforce that could go out there and create a better economy for our future. There's one thing that I forgot to mention. The main reason I'm running for U.S. Senate is because I have two children who are in 3rd and 5th grade. I do not want them to grow up in America that's run by a global corporate mafia, and I'm sorry to keep using that one, but I want you to get that one in, obviously, and think that we are going to be at endless wars. There's going to be a greater separation of the rich and poor, and we're going to continue kicking the can down the road on global warming.
Okay. I want to turn a little bit to your accomplishments, I suppose, is being a pretty robust fundraiser, and he's expected to raise several $millions for this campaign, even though we don't know who his Republican challenger is going to be. You know, you're running as a Green Party candidate, and the Green Party does not accept corporate funding either for the party or for their candidates. So tell us a little bit about your campaign, what you think the odds are, and what your strategy against you know, all of that corporate cash is going to be.
Well, there's no way that you can compete against, call it $10 to $15 million from the Republican, $10 to $15 million on the Republican. God knows how much money will be thrown in dark money. And this is a battleground state in a presidential election year. They're going to spend millions of dollars on negative ads and get out the vote. And those dollars are going to start. I've worked on 2 or 3 senators' campaigns. I worked on Tom Strickland's campaign. I worked on Mark Udall's campaigns. And I've worked with Senator Bennett on their campaigns. It's not rocket science. They got a lot of money. They spend it on slick brochures. They save it for television ads where you get beaten over the head with negative advertising. What we've seen in the last couple of years in America is a revolution. We're seeing people being sick and tired of being sick and tired and willing to get out into the streets, willing to work for a candidate like myself who's willing to talk about the real issues, speak directly, and fight every day. And the way we could do that is with social media. I run Code Pink's website, social media, and they're anti-war activists. So I haven't talked much about the fact that for the past year and a half, I've written an oral audio book with Daniel Ellsberg called Lied to Death on How Our Country Goes to War. Daniel Ellsberg was the first person charged with the Espionage Act, and he brought down Richard Nixon, and Kissinger called him the most dangerous man in America. I write articles for Mint Press News. I have a YouTube station where I interview former whistleblowers from the CIA, NSA, and other areas. So what I would like people to do is let's start by turning on the lights and making the cockroaches run. That's what I say. I have a Facebook page that I've shown the link on this interview. I have a Twitter account, Arn Menconi. I have a YouTube page, and I've put those there. I want you to help share these stories. For example, I put up 2 tweets. Now this is sort of like, I used to teach snowboarding, and there's 9 levels in snowboarding. I'm going to start us out at level 1 before I take us to level 2. And level 1 is, let's show them that people are as mad as hell, and we want to draw Michael Bennett for where he's taking money from, like DaVita Healthcare, which was indicted for fraud against Medicare. All right, Michael is taking money from a corporation, a healthcare corporation, where he sits on the committee for education and healthcare, and he doesn't fight because he's getting money from these corporations to protect their interest. Let's let him know that we're paying attention, because when they see that 5, 10, 15 people are paying attention to how they're not doing their job, they're going to start to have to talk about what is important to us. So we're going to use social media, because we don't need $10 million to pay on negative advertising. We need 100, 200, 1,000 people to join on our team and start talking about the issues that the mainstream media won't talk about, and that the elected officials won't talk about, and then your family and friends will start to get inspired by what we're leading, which is something called change.
And where people can get involved, of course, is at your website at arnmenconi.com.
Yes.
You've been nice enough to put in the comment section on the YouTube page for this live chat, your links and your Twitter handle and that sort of thing. This is going to be a really important campaign. So, any last thoughts, and kind of summarize what you think is important, and a message you'd like to send out to Colorado?
Yes, of course. Andrea, do you have? And there's about 5 people watching at this point. So let me just say something. If you really want to make a difference, you may not want to vote for me, but I know you care enough about your country and about the future for your children. All you have to do is take your phone, go to my Twitter page, and retweet what I'm talking about in terms of the issues that I spoke on today. The other thing you need to do is to go when your elected officials are meeting to try to get your vote, and you have to ask them hard questions. And you have to ask them 2 and 3 times, Michael, why won't you give us an answer on the TPP? Why did you vote for the Keystone Pipeline? And then see if you could video that, send me the link so I could get the word out that citizens are what democracy is made out of, not corporate influence. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your evening in order to listen to our campaign and how we want to work for you, the people.
Well, thank you, Arn. And you are seeking the nomination for U.S. Senate from the Green Party of Colorado. That state meeting and that nomination process is going to be held this coming Sunday, the 3rd of April. We're inviting people to come up to our website at coloradogreenparty.org. Look for the events link at the top of the website, and you'll find all of the details where you can come and participate. We're allowing anyone to come and observe, of course, and we're actually even allowing people who choose to register as green right there on site to do that and come and participate and talk to some of the other candidates that we're going to be talking to and nominating during that meeting. and to come and get involved and find an alternative way, a real people-powered way toward a better democracy. So that website that the state party is at coloradogreenparty.org. And so we invite you to come check that out. Of course, you'll find us on Facebook. You'll find us on Twitter as well, and here on our YouTube channel. And after the broadcast, we'll put our links there as well. Arn, we want to wish you luck. You are an unopposed candidate for nomination for the Green Party, but everyone needs a little bit of luck. And thank you so much, Arn, for spending time with us tonight.
Andrea, thank you for all your hard work in this opportunity. Peace.
Great. Thank you. Good night now.
Good night.